as Linda started, I figured I would continue with a little bit more of an introduction about myself, since I am new here, in terms of the lens of how it creates my perspective on the landscape. So I grew up on Long Island, a typical kind of suburban experience, with the caveat that my dad grew up on a small farm in Poland with 10 brothers and sisters. And so while it wasn't exactly part of my experience, that very much kind of created like a tie to the land was just deep in my bones, and that was always very special to me to know that. And so, yeah, I studied environmental studies and studio art. That gave me a lens to read the landscape, understand things like soil structure and sun and how plants grow in general, and then also the importance of taking care of the earth. We studied a lot of big picture projects, and I kind of left knowing I wanted to have a very hands-on, tangible, local impact in the work that I wanted to do. And then luckily, halfway through my senior year, I met my now husband and business partner, Matt, who was starting an off-grid farm in Norwich on some family land, which is the picture in the middle there. So we embarked on this project together. We built gardens, grew shiitake mushrooms, raised animals, and just tried to live off the land as best we could. And we loved that process. We learned so much, and also realized that we could not exactly make a living doing that. And then the good old Norwich listserv, I saw a post to help someone in their gardens. I was like, that seems interesting. I feel like I can do that, and really didn't know that much about ornamental landscaping at the time. And so quickly fell absolutely in love. I was like, this brings together my art background with my environmental studies and kind of agricultural learnings, and that was it. I spent the next decade learning everything I could. The winters were quiet, so I would take courses. I found the Ecological Landscaping Alliance and New Directions of the American Landscape, and just learned as much as I could about bringing my environmental lens to ornamental landscaping. So yeah, after a couple of years of working on my own, we got our cute little Rooted Gardens van and hired a few friends, and Rooted Gardens kind of took off from there. This is the Ecological Landscaping Alliance definition of what ecological landscaping is, but I'll summarize what it means to me is where fine gardening meets ecological restoration. So ecological restoration is all about the value, taking care of the animals and pollinators and insects in the soil, but it's not always pretty what happens there. And fine gardening is obviously an incredible work of art, and I'm trying to blend those two together. So to me, that means using native plants, having less lawn, building healthy soil, capturing carbon, and uniting your garden to the natural world. And I think that that's not only very important, but it's actually so fun and meets a lot of the goals that I hear from our clients today. Everyone's looking for lower maintenance gardens, and I do think that using ecological principles, a nice full lush garden with ground covers and healthy soil, reducing the amount of mulch you bring in is kind of a win-win for everyone. So in terms of how I actually do this, I will take you through all the steps of designing. So first, I usually, client will connect to me, usually with a phone call or an email, and we'll quickly be able to tell if it makes sense for us to work together. And then we'll set a date to walk through their property. So I like to hear in their own words what their goals are, how they use their land, their style, what colors they like, those sorts of things, and things like how a garden will look out their kitchen window. Then I'll assess sun, soil, the moisture, think about what views need to be blocked, or if there's, this nice sight line in the distance, think about how you could frame that. And then, just get the full lay of the land. And, some people, when I meet with them, they know what they want, but most often a client will say, I don't really know. What do you think? Make it pretty. And it's kind of my job as the artist to then, read what their style is like and try to make something that will make them happy year round. So then I head to the studio and I'll get an overview of their property so I can start to get a general lay of what their beds could be like and how to flow through their property. And then I also utilize this amazing app which allows me to plug in their property and see what the sun pattern is through different times of year, because when I come for an hour I only get a brief snapshot, but April sun is very different than July sun and different than October sun. And so this is just, I find, a very helpful tool to know what plants will do really well where. And then after that, I can have a brief overview, give them an idea of a budget just based on square footage, and give them my key plants that I think could work well there. And if that sounds good, then I can really hit the ground running with detailed plants. So at that point, I often like to go to the Native Plant Trust and put in, the sun and soil, all of the credentials for what I'm working with for the property, and get a full list of plants that could work well there. I think this is just a really helpful tool. I can plug in all the information and get a full list of plants and play around with what will work well there. Then we always make one of these bloom calendars, put in all the plants that I'm thinking of using for the site, and make sure that we have blooms from April to October, which is not only allows the garden to be beautiful that whole season, but is also essential. So there's pollinator, food, the entire growing season. And I think about things like plant heights and make sure that everything kind of is harmonious and blends together, and then head to laying out plants, very specifically. And I work from the top down, starting with the structural layer, like the large items that we know need to go in a specific place. If we need that tree to block your neighbor's garage light, or we want, something to frame a pathway on either side. And then we can work down to some of the perennials that are we plant more in swaths, and then go down to the ground matrix layer and figure out exactly how many plants we need for the site. And then the next step, which is the least fun in my opinion, is actually tracking down all of these plants. Usually between my various wholesalers, I can find just about everything I need, but inevitably you kind of have to go back a little step and pull together some substitutions, make sure everything will work to be able to have everything on site on planting day. Then it's the most fun part is planting. So we get all the plants on site, and I definitely still consider this part of the design process because no landscape is a grid on paper. So you kind of have to see how everything lands and make some fine adjustments to just, this is where it needs to just kind of feel right. So yeah, here we are at a bunch of different sites throughout the Upper Valley. And so for example, the bottom left photo, there is a amelanchier there that we really wanted to, from the view of the homeowner's patio down the hill, block as much of the house as possible. So I'll be down the hill, like from the important viewpoint, and one of my employees will be up holding the shrub in place. It will be like a little to the left, a little to the right, down the hill, and I think it makes a difference to take those steps. So there we are. And then many of you, I'm sure, know this mantra. So even after planting day, it's important to come back and visit a site and see how things are developing. So here is an install we did at DHMC. So Sleep, Creep, Leap is kind of 3 years of gardens development. This is only in the second year, but you can already see it filling in, and it's, very gratifying process. And on the far left, you can see the juniper and multiflora rose jungle that we replaced. So that was an exciting one. All right, so next, I will go into some of the specific tenets of ecological landscaping and a lot of the specifics of the work we do on people's sites. So here are the items I will go over that we think about a lot when we design and install gardens. So I'm sure many of you have heard some of the stats from Doug Talamay's work that are just so inspiring to me. So our goal is to have, per his recommendations, at least 80% native plants on any install that we do. We'd love to do more than that, but sometimes people have their heirloom peony that is special to them, and I'm not going to fault you for that. I think we can really create a lot of habitat with this goal, and I think it's important for keeping our ecosystem going, with plants being the basis of the whole food web. But it's also like, who doesn't want to go into their garden and see a nice bird's nest or a diversity of migrating bird species passing through? And the reason that native plants are important for that is that they support the most diversity of native pollinators at their caterpillar stage. And so birds need, this is incredible, over 6,000 caterpillars to raise a single brood of hatchlings. So the more native plants we have, the more we're supporting our lovely birds. All right, and so another thing that we know is very important is leaving a garden standing over the winter. We've all heard at this point, probably leave the leaves, wait until spring to do your cleanups if possible. And so I think one key that's very important to that is to actually design your garden to make that work when you can, because having floppy irises and hostas that turn into a slime, like that's not really, it's not doing much, and it's not fun to look at through the winter. But there are some designers, like Kate Adolf is the absolute master of creating a garden that looks fabulous in the winter, and so we're very inspired by that and try to do that style of work as much as we can, and we've learned a lot. So there are a lot of plants that have beautiful seed heads in the winter, which are just lovely texture, but also food for birds. And the hollow stems are where a lot of insects burrow into the winter and need that habitat to hatch the following season. So that is what we do. And here are a lot of the our favorite species of plants for doing that. Next, ground covers, a great way to be hauling in less mulch and kind of add that big mass of flowering beauty in the spring. A lot of these species bloom very early in the season, are very important nectar sources when a lot of bees are emerging. So on the far left, Tirella cordifolia, we use that all the time. That's a site where we put in about 40 plugs under a maple tree. They started out this small, and that's them blooming the following spring. Phlox divaricata, that's another site where we planted a ton of them. That was, let's see, we planted them in June, came back the following spring, and were just blown away by how quickly they just blanketed the garden and were just so beautiful and blooming in in April. And Carex pennsylvanica is kind of another fun, more whimsical texture plant that also, it's more subtle, but they have the fun little flowers in the very early spring. And those are just a few examples, of course. And so another thing that I always am looking at and try to support clients with is creating a woodland edge garden. This is a great option for reducing the amount of invasive pressure on your property. A lot of properties, people just carve out a piece of the woods, put in a lawn, and then there's no kind of that in-between space, and that's where a lot of invasives can take hold. Buckthorn, I see a ton of burning bush, garlic mustard, and so if you can fill that niche with kind of part shade, native shrubs, or perennials, you'll be able to, get ahead of that battle, or if you're really motivated, pull out the invasives that you have and replace them with something beautiful. So some of my favorites for that are witch hazels, service berries, bottlebrush buckeye, fothergillas are an amazing shrub as well. Then woodland asters, columbines, the phlox divaricata again serves that role really well, and there are plenty more. And so soft landings is another kind of, it's a catchy name for a really important zone of habitat that I could do a whole talk on this at this point. We really want to see a lot more of these gardens going in. The concept is basically planting a garden under a native tree or shrub, because so many insects will have their caterpillars in the canopy of the tree, and then they form their cocoons, and those drop down below the tree. So if you have lawn that you're mowing, you're removing the leaves, so many of those insects don't get to reach maturity. And also fireflies, which are really, not around the same way they were even in my childhood. And this has been identified as like a just amazing way to have impact there. So what you could do to plant a soft landing is lay down cardboard, and then wood chips on top, or just if you have enough leaf matter, kill down the grass, and then plant as many perennials as you can under that space. And it's definitely important to start small with your plants that you're planting under a tree to not disturb the roots and to help with establishment. But the more of this style of gardening we can see around the Upper Valley, the better. And then something else that we see a lot of people have meadow spaces that they have growing, and we're lucky in the Upper Valley for people that have the space to do that. But some people are like, it's just goldenrod's not that exciting. I'd love to make it feel like a more of a garden space. So you can we can insert some accent plants, or just even mowing a path, adding a bench, like small things like that kind of make the space feel intentional. And then another concept, similarly, in ecological gardening is the cues to care concept, which, a lot of ecological gardens don't have to, but can look a little messier than the aesthetic that we are used to in fine gardening. But a few things you can do can really make a huge difference to allow it to feel like a very intentional space. So things that we like to always have clean edges between our lawn and our garden spaces. That makes a big difference. If you just have some neat border plants, and then get into kind of the more big wild perennials, or just choosing something like a simple color palette, if you really want to still maintain a more formal feel in your space. If you do just like pinks and whites, that really could maintain a more formal feel. And again, adding some elements such as a bench or sculpture or neat pathways through your garden. That helps it feel intentional. And then another thing that we do throughout our installations is to start with the smallest plants possible. And landscape plugs have come a long way. There are a lot of companies offering these now, and so they're really just about 3 or 4 inches deep, 2 inches wide. You can sell trays of 50 of them. So like that far left, that's like a delivery of plants that we got. And the beauty is that starting small, not only are you having a lot less carbon emissions by just plants being shipped around the country, that's a lot less soil, a lot less plastic, but you get to plant a lot more plants. They're a lot less expensive, and they really take off incredibly well. Like I had said with that example with the Phlox divericata in that landscape, that's the plants at 1 year old. So they are specially designed to have robust roots that can just take off super quickly, and I think it's really exciting. Okay, so let's see, how am I doing on time here?
You're good.
Okay, great. So now I will go through some of my favorite plants, a non-exhaustive list. What we hear a lot of from all of our clients is low maintenance. Deer are a huge issue. And we have a lot of clay in Hanover, so these are the challenges we're working with a lot. So I just selected a few of my favorite plants to work with that. So amelanchiers are fabulous. They have early spring blooms, and then have a good presence through the season, and then offer fall foliage color and berries for birds that are also just beautiful. And we find that they are pretty deer resistant, but a lot of native shrubs, we can also say deer tolerant, that they are from the region, they're used to some deer browse, and they can recover quickly. So the amelanchier fall in that category. And then Eastern redbud, I don't know why we don't see more of this. I know there's one absolutely gorgeous one on Wheelock Street in Hanover. I have never seen any deer browse on this small tree. It can fit in many of our landscapes here. It is just absolutely covered in blooms in the early spring, and the blooms come right out of the stem, the trunk of the tree, which is just very wild. And then they just have a lovely green foliage and also some nice fall color. And then 9-barks, I also have really only ever seen deer browse on them the first year that we plant them, and they're super adaptable. I have not ever seen one really struggling at all, and they really don't need much pruning either. They have early spring blooms, some fall color, and then they're the bottom left is their seed heads. They're pretty cool, and the ones in my yard, they're still kind of like have these nice, they're hanging down and have some nice color and texture through the winter months. Next, clethra. I use this a lot in moist conditions. It also can bloom in the shade. It smells really great for anyone who has one in their yard. It is really wonderful. Common name summer sweet, and it is a total butterfly magnet as well. And they're really good with clay soil. And then this northern bush honeysuckle, Thyrovilla lanicera, is a smaller shrub that are usually 3 to 4 feet in height, and it is very, very drought tolerant. It can absolutely bake. It's a great option for along a walkway or against your house in any sort of full sun conditions. Hummingbirds love it, butterflies love it, and it kind of turns these fun yellow and rust colors in the fall as well. And another one that just like, I don't know, it's like, I don't want to say set it and forget it, but you really don't have to do much with them at all. They don't need to be shaped regularly, like maybe some rejuvenation pruning every 5 years or so if you want to, but yeah, they're really great. And then, this maybe is a little unusual one, but I think that blueberries are a great aesthetic plant. Like even if you're not getting any of the berries because the birds eat them, I don't think it really matters because they are just this brilliant crimson color in the fall. It's amazing, and their spring blooms are very important, and they can tolerate shade, and they're great for low nutrient sites. If you have a bunch of pine trees on your property, you'll be able to grow some blueberries. And here's another one that I don't feel like I see that often. I have one growing right on the entrance of my garden gate. It is a clematis. It's our native New England clematis. Super easygoing, covered in little white flowers, and I'm just obsessed with their seed heads, actually. They are just so cool and whimsical. That's it on the left. So that's another plant that, interesting in the spring, interesting in the fall, and yeah, it doesn't need much from me, which is great. Allows me to do more gardening. Okay, now getting to the perennials. Penstemon digitalis. Deer don't touch it. It blooms in the spring, and then that's its seed head on the left. So no deadheading required, in my opinion. I think the seed head is cool, and it has this fun color that I feel like just pairs well with most perennials that you have in your garden. It kind of is, a real workhorse. And then, we all know asters. Here are a few of our favorites. Bluewood aster is great for those part shade conditions. New York aster is more of a sun, a bit of larger aster, blooms for so long. We had some that still had flowers on them in November this year, which I don't know if there are even any pollinators around in November, but it's fun to still see some color out that time of year. And then this is another one that I discovered a couple years ago. The stiffleaf aster is one of the rare native plants that works well as a ground cover, in my opinion, around here. That's kind of I feel like a lot of our native perennials that are for full sun are pretty tall and robust, and this is a nice one that can kind of blanket a garden space with, great for under shrubs to cover the ground and have some great color, very drought tolerant. And then grasses. I love planting with grasses. It is a matter of opinion, I suppose, but I think there are so many fun ones. And again, if you're trying to create kind of that full season garden that could stay standing through the winter, grasses provide great texture. There are all sorts of different height grasses, different styles, and slight, variations in color. So a lot of us, I think, have seen like the switchgrass and little blue stem. Is like, that one is just like, how did nature create that? The one on the right with the blues, the reds, it can have a little bit of orange even in the fall. So cool. And then the Bouteloua, I think, is a really fun one, definitely on the whimsical side again, but its seed heads, kind of those little floating, they're like sideways, and they really glow in a garden, especially in evening sun. And then the tufted hairgrass is one of the grasses that does well in shadier conditions. So that's great to have in the wheelhouse as well. And then we all know the importance of milkweed, but the common milkweed is not necessarily the easiest plant to garden with, but there are other milkweeds that are becoming more commercially available. This is the swamp milkweed, so it does like more moist conditions. The beauty of this one is that it's clump forming rather than the common one, you know, that kind of can really spread and take over really quickly, but is still the popular host plant for monarch caterpillars. And so now I will kind of go over a few of the other tools that I like to use. So there was that National Wildlife Foundation Plant Finder tool, and then you can also search by zip code. Here you can see different plants listed by the amount of species of animals that it supports, which is just pretty fun. So if you really want to max out your impact, there is somewhere you can go. So here, for example, blueberries and cranberries support 276 species of butterflies and moth as a host plant. So that is pretty incredible. And then we also are really lucky to have the Vermont Center for Eco Studies here. We hope to be partnering with them a lot more. They do a lot of studies on how we can have a greater impact in how we tend our landscapes here. And like I said, the Ecological Landscaping Association is where I have found a lot of information, a lot of what other landscapers are doing. They have a whole, if you join that organization, they have a portal full of talks with scientists and other landscapers in the area. So I'm hoping we can all learn from each other more as we move forward in this style of caring for our home landscapes. And then Doug Talamay has lots of books out and has the Homegrown National Parks program, which is a really fun concept of creating our own national park by linking all of our backyards together and how we tend our spaces, which feels more important than ever now. I listed a few other designers that inspire me. You can look them up, and then Refugia is based in Pennsylvania. They do lots of similar work and kind of have their own network of linking all of their clients together. You can look on a map and see how close you are to other zones of habitat, and I think that would be really fun to start in the Upper Valley as well. And then we love to go down to Garden in the Woods in Massachusetts to get inspired, and the Mount Cuba Center as well. So that is my talk. This is how you can reach me and what we do. I can just mention that my husband in the back runs all electric lawn care. We can take care of your fruit trees as well as garden design and maintenance. So if you have an existing garden that you want to rehab or want to start fresh, we are here for you and happy to take any questions. Yeah.